It looks like Joe Biden might have an E. Jean Carroll situation on his hands, and we'll give you all those details. Plus, how is the RNC spending their money when they're supposedly in debt? It's going to tick you off, and our very own Jen Van Laar from Red State, who broke the story, is going to join us. Also, Ron DeSantis sending troops to the border, and you won't believe what you can do in a U.S. Senate chamber and not get arrested. It's downright dirty. That and a whole lot more coming up right now. But we start with the death of those 3 American soldiers at the hands of terrorists funded by and supported by and coordinated by the Iranian government and, well, by extension, funded by the Biden administration, who sent billions of dollars to Iran. And then, of course, that money went to fund terror attacks that killed our soldiers. Well, President Joe Biden finally got around to calling the parents of one of those soldiers. And, well, he did what he always does in times like this. He made it all about himself.
President Biden calling Oneida and Sean Sanders, whose 24-year-old daughter Kennedy was killed in the attack.
I know, everybody, I know there's nothing anybody can say or do to ease the pain. I've been there.
Yes, sir, we understand.
The parents overcome with emotion when the president reveals how their daughter will be honored.
We're promoting her posthumously to sergeant.
Oh, wow. That is the best news I've heard today. Thank you so much.
I don't want to nitpick, but it's pronounced posthumously. And when somebody says a word like posthumously, like that, he said posthumously, it suggests that he's reading. He's reading a card, I think. No way to know for sure. Maybe he's always pronounced posthumously as posthumously. I'm pretty sure he's reading that. He's reading what he was told to say. Number one. Number two, can you imagine if Donald Trump at a time like this calling grieving parents of a member of the military that died because of his policies, if he said posthumously instead of posthumously, I'm pretty sure we'd have wall-to-wall coverage of what a jerk he is. So allow me for just 1 minute to tell you what a jerk Joe Biden is. But honestly, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Watch what he does next.
You don't know how much that means to us.
Oh, well, I tell you what, it means a lot to me. My son spent a year in Iraq until I lost him. And 1% of all these kids are the ones that take care of 99% of us.
By the way, I'm quite sure that he was reading a card in front of him and reading it poorly. 1% of these kids, that makes no sense. No, the members of the military represent 1% of the American population, and they take care of the 99% of us. That's the data point. That's the relevant thing to say. Now, 1% of these kids, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But let's focus on the real problem here. You saw it. I saw it. We all saw it. We see it all the time. I lost my son, Bo, in Iraq. My son, Bo, was in Iraq. That's how I lost him. That's not how the president's son died. He acts like his son died in combat. He acts like his son died the same way these incredible parents' child just died. Serving in combat and dying at the hands of the enemy. That's not what happened to Bo Biden. Bo Biden died in a hospital bed in Maryland. He had brain cancer. It's terrible. Why isn't that terrible enough? Yes, he served in Iraq. He didn't die in combat, and he didn't die at the hands of the enemy. And Joe Biden has been fact-checked on this over and over again. He has been corrected on this. He has been challenged on this. And he refuses, absolutely refuses to stop doing this. Here he was just the other day.
Donald Trump, when he was commander-in-chief, refused to visit a cemetery, U.S. cemetery outside of Paris for fallen American soldiers. And he referred to those heroes, and I quote, as suckers and losers. He actually said that. He said that. How dare he say that? How dare he talk about my son and all of us like that?
How dare he talk about my son like that? acting like his son died in Normandy. And by the way, that whole story is bogus. It's been denied by multiple witnesses on the record that Trump never even did that. But to score cheap political points attacking Donald Trump, or to score cheap empathy points with the parents of a fallen soldier, he will lie. He will lie no matter what. You don't believe me? Here, these guys, Snopes, these guys are left-wingers. These guys are those kind of fact checkers that support Democrats and liberals at any turn if they can. But even Snopes, headline, did Beau Biden die while serving in Iraq? Fact check. No, it's false. It's 100% false. Here's Joe Biden. Again, this one was, I think, about 2 years ago.
My son was a major, U.S. Army, lost him in Iraq. Service medal, Bronze Star, like you all about country. Thank you.
There he is, talking to troops in Japan, again, connecting with them, showing his empathy. Yeah, I lost my son when he was serving in Iraq. It's a lie. It's a lie, and it's not the only thing he lies about. He lies about a ton of things. A while back, Admiral John Kirby, spokesperson for the National Security Council, he does the press briefing sometimes, he was asked by a reporter, giving multiple instances of things that the president has lied about. Why does he keep doing this? Well, John Kirby, why does he keep doing this?
John, in the past couple of weeks, the president has lied about being at Ground Zero the day after the September 11th attacks, falsely claimed he saw the Pittsburgh Bridge collapse, claimed his grandfather died in the hospital days before his birth. What is going on with the president? Is he just believing things that did happen, or is he just randomly making stuff up?
The president was deeply touched and honored to be able to spend 9/11 with military members there in Alaska and some families, and was honored by their presence and the chance to make an important set of remarks about why we need to continue to remember that day. And he did that. And he spoke about a visit to Ground Zero, which he did participate in about a week or so after the event. And what that looked and what that smelled and what that felt like. And it had a visceral impact on him, as it did so many other Americans on that terrible day. And he's focused on making sure that an attack like that never happens again.
Not really an answer to the question, is it? The question, just to remind you, was, is he just rambling on and making things up, or does he actually believe these things are true? We didn't really get a straight answer to that. Again, another example, you remember after those fires in Maui, he decided to go get a trip to Maui and show his empathy by connecting with the people there. And, well, he sure did.
I don't want to compare difficulties, but we have a little sense, Jill and I, what it's like to lose a home. Years ago, now 15 years ago, I was in Washington doing Meet the Press. It was a sunny Sunday, and lightning struck at home on a little lake. It's outside of our home, not a lake, a big pond, and hit a wire and came up underneath our home into the heating ducts, the air conditioning duct. To make a long story short, I almost lost my wife, my 67 Corvette, and my cat. But all kidding aside, I watched the firefighters, the way they responded. There's an old expression. I grew up right across the street from a fire hall in Claymont, Delaware.
Yeah, let's fact check this real fast. First of all, he did not see the firefighters doing their job because this was a kitchen fire that was put out within 20 minutes. By the time he got back to Delaware, it was well over. And, he's talking to people who have just lost their homes and their children in fires. Their children are dead, burned in these horrific fires in Maui. And he's telling a personal anecdote about, his Corvette coming close to get it. By the way, his Corvette was never in danger. It was a kitchen fire. Nowhere near his Corvette in the garage or all those classified documents he was keeping in there. What is wrong with him? And there's never any sort of repercussion from the media. In fact, here, he was praised. He tells lies like this, and it's really his way of reaching out and touching the American people who are feeling pain.
Listen,
It's great to be here.
I understand from my colleagues in Hawaii that President Biden was very warmly received there. And I think also that the president has a unique capacity to connect with people and express empathy for what they've been going through.
There you go. You see? He tells a lie, falsely connecting himself to somebody else's grief and tragedy. And instead of being called out on the horrific emotional manipulation that his lie is meant to evoke, in fact, he's praised. He's praised for his empathy. Time magazine during the campaign, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the return of empathy when America needs it most. Associated Press, Biden's empathy shapes policy, but some voters don't feel it. Yeah, you stupid voters. Why don't you jump on board the empathy train? The Atlantic, Biden may be just the person America needs. A president should connect with who we are, but also make us better than who we are, even if he has to lie through his teeth to do it. And Forbes, how empathy defines Joe Biden. Well, I mean, there you go. He's not lying. He doesn't continue to repeat the same lie. He doesn't emotionally manipulate the parents of soldiers who just died because of his failed policies in the Middle East by lying to them and telling them that his son also died in the Middle East. No, that's just empathy. Thank God we have somebody with empathy back in the White House again. When last we checked in with Ronna McDaniel, the chairwoman of the RNC, we were interviewing her after the debate down in Miami when she conceded that she and the RNC had absolutely no involvement in the Virginia elections this last November. She claimed that the governor of Virginia told her that he didn't want any of that dirty RNC money to win any elections, which still hasn't been confirmed by anybody. It seems odd that the RNC wouldn't be involved in an election. Last I checked, that's sort of what they're supposed to be doing. But now, thanks to some amazing reporting from managing editor of redstate.com, Jen Van Laar, we've learned what Ronna McDaniel was doing with a lot of that RNC money. Apparently, $1.5 million on floral arrangements. Well, that'll win you an election. Limos, management and media consultants, and a whole lot more. Joining us now is the aforementioned Jennifer Van Laar. She, of course, as I mentioned, the managing editor of Red State, part of our Town Hall Media family. And Jen, first of all, great reporting, great research. How long did it take you to go through all of these records to come up with this story?
Well, I don't even want to count up the exact number of hours because it would probably make me very sad. But at least 120. I mean, the last few weeks, last week in particular, about 18-hour days. I started looking at the end of November when the RNC money problems were kind of first being publicized and thought, okay, well, let's check in, because I did a report a year ago and I thought things would have changed. I honestly started looking at it thinking, okay, I'm not going to find the same stuff I found last year. And then I did.
Right. In fact, let's remind everybody that your reporting on the expenditures at the RNC last year actually led to the existential crisis that Ronna McDaniel had. She almost lost re-election to the chairmanship because of that reporting and because it was such a groundswell. The problem is, of course, the people who vote for RNC chair, it's a very small number of people, and many of them are in their position because Ronna McDaniel put them in their position. So it was sort of baked in the cake that she was going to win re-election. But you ruffled a lot of feathers with that one. How's the feedback been so far on this one?
More of the same. What happens is that the Ronna and her spokespeople end up sending out emails to the 168 just saying that I'm a dishonest reporter and that I got my numbers wrong. I mean, the numbers come from the FEC. They can look at them too. If they actually read my report, every time that I say they paid this for this, I link to the FEC report that's all lined up for those search things so that they can look right at it themselves. I'm not asking anyone to take my word for it. And I hope that they will look at this because I'm not going to say anyone's lying to them, but I'm saying that people have vested interests in keeping things the way that they are and don't want people to do their own research.
Right. Well, the important thing is, yes, you've got screenshots of all these expenditures. This is all public filings. Any reporter, if they wanted to put the time and energy into it, could have done this. You did it, Jen, for us, and we appreciate it. Everyone should go to redstate.com, look at this information for themselves. Let's go back to something you just mentioned here. The RNC is facing financial woes. This is actually the first time in about 12 years, I think, when the RNC has had some cash problems. They were in a pretty good financial position for a while there. And I saw headlines that they were looking for some credit lines and they were about to go in the hole, right?
Right.
So, I mean, they've got financial problems and they're spending money on what now? What did you discover?
Well, on the management consulting, which that's different than there's other types of consulting that I think are legitimate and needed, like data consulting, strategy consulting, maybe logistics consulting, things like that. You want to get people who are experts in their field to give you the skinny on that stuff. But with that line of credit, something I found out here in Vegas, I'm here covering this winter meeting, is that they're not getting this line of credit through a normal kind of loan. They're collateralizing their donor list and saying that it's worth, they told the members on Thursday, no, today's Thursday, on Wednesday, that it was worth $100 million and that they're taking out a $10 million line of credit against it. So to me, that says, I mean, in 2016, they had a credit line that they used at the beginning of the cycle to invest in some infrastructure, then paid it off. That was through BB&T, which is now Truist. That's a standard thing. Given what interest rates are today for just normal things, this sounds like a little bit of a riskier loan that would probably have even higher interest rates. Yeah. None of that has been all explained. And if you're paying a bunch of money on interest back, that goes against what we can use in elections. So what's the point?
Right. Well, it sounds like they're that sounds like how the federal government operates, actually, right, if you think about it.
And we're parting fiscal responsibility.
For 13 months, the RNC spent an average of $83,000 a month on management consulting. First of all, do we have a definition of what that means, management consulting? Because I thought when you hire a chairwoman of the RNC and you've got an infrastructure of people you hired as managers, that they're the ones who were doing that job. Why do you need to then get an outside firm to tell you how to manage?
Exactly. And at least 165,000 of that was like the coaching kind of things where they come in the office and do the seminars and teach you how to have positive workplace environment and that kind of thing.
Stop. Seriously?
Seriously. And then they're saying that 200,000 of it was actually data consulting, but why didn't they then categorize it as data consulting?
Right.
So that's kind of odd. And another person that got paid almost $300,000 who used to work for Reince, they're saying that this
Reince
guy,
previous chairman of the RNC.
They're saying that this guy is, well, he's helping set up the RNC convention and the debates and things. But here's the problem. They have a man who's Rana's senior advisor making over $300,000 a year. And in a Politico report, it says that his main duties are going to be working on the convention and the debates. Then they have a convention CEO who's making about $250,000. So what are we're working on $750,000 or more for people to look over debates and the convention.
Right.
Right.
That doesn't make a whole lot of sense at all. It sounds like a lot of redundancy there. Is that this BMO consulting that you're referring to here?
That's different.
Okay. So who's Benjamin Ottenhoff and why does he get tens of thousands of dollars a month?
He got $97,500 in that 13-month period. He's the treasurer of Reade, which is the payment processor for all the donations. And in my estimation, that's a little bit of a conflict of interest if you're telling this organization, management consulting, and one of their main contracts is with the company that you helped found and you're the treasurer of.
There's also a really weird line item here. I know that we're getting into the minutia here, but let's face it, if the RNC, they're asking for us to donate to them because that way they're going to paint the country red and they're already in debt. And then it's worthwhile for us potential donors to actually say, okay, how are you currently spending your money? So let's talk about office supplies.
Right.
Stay with us here, guys, because there's something happening here that's a lot less mundane than office supplies. This seems like an extraordinary number. What are they doing with their office supply budget?
I don't know. I mean, there could be things that are miscategorized because The industry standard for the number of employees they have would be about $86,000 for that 13 and a half month. I gave them a half month in there too, time period. And they spent almost $300,000. And
$300,000 on office supplies for a
Right.
business that has about 200 employees.
and 60,000 of that went basically to break room supplies.
Well, I mean, listen, in DC, that might mean bottles of vodka and tequila. I'm not going to hold it against them, seriously.
Right.
This is
I wouldn't
Washington.
either.
All right, good to know. What else stuck out to you? The media consultant number I find remarkable, considering I didn't see the RNC doing anything with the media.
Yeah, well, the woman that got the bulk of that, $97,000, she had been a media person at the RNC for about 75 grand a year. And then within just since April of this year is when she started that contract over close to $100,000 to book them. It's crazy.
It is insane. You also make the point in your article, and I want to remind everybody again, go to redstate.com, read this for yourself, check out all the links. Everything is sourced. Everything is, you've got screenshots of all of the financials. You made the point here that back in 2010, then chairman of the RNC, Michael Steele, everyone knows him now as a big star on MSNBC. That's a whole other story. But he basically lost his job because of misspending, because of the exact same questions that you're highlighting right here.
Yeah. And they said that Karl Rove would go through the office, and if there were flowers on the tables or at different meetings, he would just have a fit. And now we're spending all this money. It's not just the 70,000 within a fundraising line item for the event production. There's another $45,000 in flowers. So they can't just say, oh, those were for events. Like at the fundraising events, there was another 45,000. And then it was just funny things in the office supplies. Like there was this one line item, Furbish Studio. So I look up all these things. I looked up what the company website, that kind of thing. And it's these custom needlepoint pillows that are about $100 each. And I don't begrudge someone having nice things in their office. You spend a lot of time there. You want it to look nice. But Larry, I've been in the town hall offices with you. Like if we have things in our office, it's things that we bought ourselves.
Yeah.
And, so if you want to bring in fancy candles and embroidered pillows, great. You just don't build a company for it. But what I found hilarious was one of the pillows had the saying, I can buy myself flowers on it. And I thought, oh, is that the one that Ronna has in her office? Because that would fit.
That's ironic, especially if you're billing back all those flowers to the RNC. Listen, we're asked, we Americans are asked, especially we Republicans, we're asked to donate to win these elections. We're asked to be involved. We're asked to get in there and actually make a difference. And it's kind of hard to get motivated to do that when you see the money that we're giving to the Republican National Committee is treated this way. Is she gonna have to answer to this? Have they given any, other than sliming you, has there been any legitimate response?
No, there's not been a legitimate response. I'm told that at the members meeting yesterday, she completely went off on me and Charlie Kirk and slamming my reporting and just saying that somehow that we hate the RNC or just have a vendetta against Ronna. And that's not true. Why I started looking at this is because I'm a Republican Party delegate, official delegate in California. I've worked on grassroots things. I know you have, Larry, and I know the financial challenges that grassroots face. And I want to look at it, make sure that our money's going somewhere that it should go and provide accountability. If it wasn't for my reporting, no one would be looking at this. No one would be giving her junk about it. Yep. And some RNC members have told me that my reporting has given them more information on where the money is going than what they've been told by headquarters.
Well, I believe that, but at the same time, I kind of blame them because they should be demanding these answers. They have their own responsibility as voting members of the committee, and something's got to change here. This isn't how the RNC was run like 8 years ago, 10 years ago. That was back when we actually motivated and created an entity under Reince Priebus, who I think did a pretty good job as chairman of the RNC.
I agree.
And his right-hand man, Sean Spicer, and they created an entity that actually built the infrastructure that allowed for a lot of electoral victories, including President Trump's win in 2016. Since then, boy, what a difference 8 years makes. Jennifer Van Laar, thank you for joining us on this. Thanks for giving us all the details. Thanks for the great reporting. And, keep your head on a swivel because they're coming after you for this kind of thing.
for sure. Thank you.
You're probably used to that by now, too. Of course, by now, you know the story of E. Jean Carroll winning $83.3 million in that defamation lawsuit against Donald Trump. This is about a supposed sexual assault that happened, decades ago. And because President Trump denied it, well, she then triggered a defamation suit against him, and a jury just awarded her all that money, right? Those are the new rules that we're living under, right? This is the new standard in American politics. So I guess it seems fair that Joe Biden is now facing the exact same kind of lawsuit. Remember Tara Reade? Tara Reade used to work for Joe Biden back in the 90s, and she claimed during the 2020 presidential election that she was sexually assaulted by her boss, by Senator Joe Biden. Well, she is now suing for $10 million with the U.S. Department of Justice. She said that she had her privacy invaded, she had emotional distress, and a violation of her rights. She also accuses the FBI of conducting a secret operation called Operation Cassandra to stalk, discredit, intimidate, and potentially harm her to eliminate her as a threat to Joe Biden. Now, you might not remember this story in the 2020 campaign. It had a little bit of steam for a little while, but then the whole thing disappeared because Joe Biden sat down face to face with Mika Brzezinski, and he answered every question and denied the entire thing unequivocally. And then everybody in the media and everybody in politics was able to say, you see, he denied it unequivocally. He faced Mika Brzezinski, of all people, and answered every tough question, and now we can move on because it's over. That's how they treated it. I want to show you a little bit of that interview with Mika Brzezinski, and I want you to look at it right now, and you tell me if you think Joe Biden seems like an honest man with nothing to hide. It's just going to be a little bit of that interview, but I just want to remind you of what happened in this election. Watch.
The first is about your University of Delaware records. Do you agree with the reporting that those records were supposed to be revealed to the public and then they were resealed for a longer period of time until after you leave, quote, public life? And if you agree with that, if that's what happened, why did that happen?
Because, look, the fact is that there's a lot of things of speeches I've made, positions I've taken, interviews that I did overseas with people, all of those things relating to my job. And the idea that they would all be made public in the fact while I was running for public office, they could be really taken out of context. The papers are position papers. They are documents that existed and that when I, for example, when I met with Putin or when I met with whomever, and all of that to be fodder in a campaign at this time, I don't know of anybody who's done anything like that. And so the National Archives is the only place there would be anything having to do with personnel records. There are no personnel records in the Biden papers at the university.
All right, so I'm going to pause here because this is really about Tara Reade, and we're going to continue. But just for a second there, the fact that this position was never challenged at the time, his personal papers from his entire career in the Senate and as vice president are kept at the University of Delaware, and it's all under lock and seal. And his argument that he just made there was, listen, I'm running for president. The last thing that I want is to anybody to look at the papers from my long political career because they might use it against me. And everyone was okay with that. I mean, think about that for a minute. God forbid anybody know what, I said to Putin when I met with them. I just want to be president now. That wouldn't be relevant to the campaign. And by the way, last I checked, every single one of Donald Trump's private personal papers, including his tax returns, have been illegally leaked to the press. And everyone celebrates that. But the key point here is documents pertaining to Tara Reade, the woman who is now accusing, or who was at that time and is still accusing Joe Biden of sexual misconduct. What Mika Brzezinski asks is, listen, why don't you open up those documents so we can see if there's anything there pertaining to Tara Reade? And Joe Biden is saying, well, no, because there are no personnel records there. And we're just supposed to take his word for it, right? Well, now watch how this interview goes.
So personnel records aside, are you certain there was nothing about Tara Reade in those records? And if so,
I am absolutely certain.
Why not approve a search of her name in those records?
Approve a search of her name?
Yes, and reveal anything that might be related to Tara Reade in the University of Delaware records.
There is nothing. They wouldn't. They're not there. And if it's, I don't understand the point you're trying to make.
The point I'm trying to make is that
personnel records by definition.
The point I'm trying to make is that you are approving and actually calling for a search of the National Archives records of anything pertaining to Tara Reade. I'm asking why not do the same in the University of Delaware records, which have raised questions because they were supposed to be revealed to the public and then they were sealed for a longer period of time. Why not do it for both sets of records?
Because the material in the University of Delaware has no personnel files, but it does have a lot of confidential conversations that I had with the president about a particular issue, that I had with the heads of state of other places, that would not be something that would be revealed while I was in public office or while I was seeking public office. It just stands to reason. To the best of my knowledge, no one else has done that either.
I'm just talking about her name, not anybody else in those records. A search for that. Nothing classified with the president or anybody else. I'm just asking, why not do a search for Tara Reade's name in the University of Delaware records?
Look, I mean, who does that search?
The University of Delaware. Perhaps you set up a commission that can do it. I don't know. Whatever is the fairest way to create the most transparency.
Well, look, Mika, she said she filed a report. She has her employment records still. She said she refiled a report with the only office that would have a report in the United States Senate at the time. If the report was ever filed, it was filed there, period.
Now, you saw his performance there. Do you think he seems like someone who's telling the truth? Do you think he seems like someone who has nothing to hide? And he still never actually gave a legitimate answer. If there's no records pertaining to Tara Reade, then why not authorize a simple search of the name Tara Reade? And of course, that never happened. Also, did you notice a lot of delay going on there with the questions and answers? Is it me, or do you think maybe somebody was feeding him answers in his ear? I know that there's one point where it looks like he reaches down and gets a piece of paper that somebody hands him. Did you see that right at the end? Here, watch this.
Set up a commission that can do it. I don't know. Whatever is the fairest way to create the most transparency.
See that? See that? Somebody handed it. You can even hear the paper. Boy, did we really get taken for a ride in 2020. But listen, the American people are supposed to believe that Joe Biden never did anything to this employee, Tara Reade. Just take his word for it. He's Joe Biden, after all. Take his word as a Biden, right? And besides, there's no kind of past kind of behavior that he's ever been accused of, right? There's no pattern of behavior that this fits into, that Joe Biden, I'm sure, has nothing to worry about with this new defamation lawsuit, except for the fact that Lucy Flores might be brought in as a witness. You remember her? She talked about the awkward kiss that he gave her, changed how she saw Joe Biden. She was a Democrat supporter, Lucy Flores was. She wrote that in March of 2019. Or maybe she might have to answer to Amy Lapos. Amy Lapos is the Connecticut woman who says Joe Biden touched her inappropriately at a 2009 fundraiser. She talked about that in April of 2019. Of course, he might also have to confront the issue of Caitlin Caruso. She calls herself a sexual assault survivor and said that Joe Biden touched her uncomfortably. This was in April of 2019 also. Of course, if he can answer to all three of those people, then he might then finally have to deal with the accusations of DJ Hill, who also accused Joe Biden of sexual misconduct. This also in April of 2019. Boy, there sure were a lot of stories about Joe Biden and sexual inappropriate behavior back there in 2019. And it all sort of disappeared when he got the nomination for president. By the way, all of this inappropriate behavior from Joe Biden with Tara Reade and some of these other allegations, it all happened in the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, back when another very famous Democrat who ended up being president of the United States was also acting in a very similar way. That was Bill Clinton, who, just like Joe Biden, denied all this stuff left and right until, Monica Lewinsky had a little bit of evidence that suggested that maybe it really did happen. Bill Clinton at the time hired someone to clean up that whole mess, politically speaking, of course. His name was John Podesta. John Podesta. John Podesta is in the news again this week. Joe Biden just hired him to replace John Kerry as the new climate czar. It's amazing how when the news cycle happens to move this way, John Podesta just shows up. Isn't it amazing? You remember last week we talked about this showdown happening down at the Texas border. Supreme Court ruling said that the federal enforcement can go in and cut those razor wires that the Texas National Guard set up. But of course, the Texas National Guard can continue to replace any razor wire with more razor wire. That's exactly what Governor Greg Abbott did. Joe Biden gave him a deadline, said, you better let my guys in there and cut this wire. You better stop putting up new wire. And well, it was a standoff. And well, it continues to be a standoff. You'll remember also that 27 states have pledged to support Greg Abbott and the people of Texas in this showdown with the federal government over the border. Well, yesterday, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida made good on his promise to support Texas.
We have stepped up probably more than any other state has stepped up, and we're proud to do that. However, we don't think this is enough. I believe that a state has a right to fortify its own borders. And so if Texas is helping to erect barriers, putting up razor wire, doing other things to keep illegal aliens out, I want to be helpful with them doing that. I don't want to be part of the federal government trying to tear down these barriers and let more people in illegally. This is crazy that this is the case. So today, we are going to fortify our presence along the southern border. We're providing up to 1 battalion of Florida National Guard, as well as our first ever deployment of the Florida State Guard. And the goal is to help Texas fortify this border, help them strengthen the barricades, help them add barriers, help them add the wire that they need to so that we can stop this invasion once and for all.
This is really important for multiple reasons. Now, a lot of people watching this story play out say that the next step that could escalate the situation is President Biden taking federal control of the state National Guard there in Texas. This has echoes of the standoff between the Eisenhower administration and the governor of Arkansas, George Wallace, back in the desegregation era of the late 50s, Brown versus Board of Education, the Southern schools run by Democrats, by the way. Southern states had to integrate their schools with black students. And of course, you remember George Wallace standing in the doorway of that school. And well, Eisenhower took over federal control of the state National Guard, and they ushered those little black children into that school, right past those racist, segregationist Democrats. And well, that's a pretty historic moment. Well, now, apparently, Joe Biden is being egged on to do the exact same thing in Texas, to take federal control of the Texas National Guard. That would be an escalation of the situation in a big way. And theoretically, all these other states that are providing their National Guard, I guess the president could also federalize those troops as well. It would be unprecedented, really. The reason why Governor DeSantis' statement today is relevant is you heard him say that not only is he committing a battalion of National Guard, but he's also committing his state guard. That's right. That's right. A couple of years ago, Ron DeSantis created a brand new Florida State Guard that is completely separate from the National Guard. It's actually outside of the control of Joe Biden or whoever the president might be. He faced a lot of criticism when he did that, but there's nothing unconstitutional about it. He can do this as governor of his state, and he has done it. And if Joe Biden does, in fact, try to nationalize the state troops, these guys will not be part of that. It could possibly be a situation where the last troops standing there helping out the people of Texas will be from Florida. Be fascinating to watch how that unfolds. Governor DeSantis also took to social media with one of these many selfie videos he's been doing to further explain the border crisis and what's going on in Washington, D.C.
This border deal is a farce. Joe Biden already has the authority to shut the border down. He could declare it a national emergency. He could stop the invasion cold if he wanted to. He does not want to. He wants to let people in, and we know that there are people from all over the world that have come in illegally. We know from hostile countries. We know it's weakened the United States. It's also destroying this nation's sovereignty. Now, this so-called deal purports to give him tools so that he could actually close the border. The reality is it's green lighting up to 5,000 illegals every single day. That's 1.8 million plus over the course of a year, which they're codifying into law as saying that's an appropriate number of illegal entries. I think the appropriate number of illegal entries is 0. And our policy should reflect that we do not want people coming to this country illegally. We should not be giving benefits and work permits to people that have come to this country illegally. So Biden has the authority. He doesn't have the will. He doesn't have the political philosophy to want to actually solve the problem. Meanwhile, the country continues to get weaker, and the problem is going to continue to persist. So this is a question of leadership. It's a question of will. But to codify 1.8 million illegal entries every year with a piece of legislation, I think would make the problem worse. I think it would incentivize people to keep coming to this country illegally. And we should not have anybody coming to this country illegally if we're doing our jobs right.
Ron DeSantis throwing facts, logic, the Constitution, and troops to the southern border. Boom! Take that, President Biden. Can I just ask a quick question here? I'm sure you're all thinking the same thing. Where was this Ron DeSantis for the last year? Where was this guy? It's like as soon as he started running for president, this Ron DeSantis disappeared and some pod person came in. Well, have you seen these selfie videos he does? He's going over the top of the media, over the top of political consultants and his little campaign apparatus now that he's not running anymore. And he's talking right to you. He's making sense. He's a good communicator. He's right on the issues. He's explaining his position. You see it every time. You see it every time, whether it's a governor or a senator or other kind of elected official. They're doing a great job. They're super effective. People say you should run for president. They start raising money. It turns out that there's a groundswell of support for them. They say, you betcha, I'm going to run for president. And then they hire political consultants. And the consultants come in and they control them. They control their messaging. They control their profile. They control their persona. They control their behavior. They control everything. And it ruins them. We see it every single time. And it's clear that that's exactly what happened with Ron DeSantis. If this guy that you just saw taking firm action, passing these laws in Florida and committing troops to the border and picking up his cell phone and talking straight to the people without all the other stuff, if that was the guy that was running for the last year, you think it would have made a difference? Maybe not. But he sure would have been a better candidate. And in my opinion, he would have been a lot more like Ron DeSantis than whoever that guy was running for president. Breaking news out of Washington, D.C. The United States Capitol Police have decided not to bring any charges against that intern who worked for Ben Cardin, the senator from Maryland. The guy who made a video of himself having sex in a Senate committee room. Yeah, according to Jake Sherman reporting, the Capitol Police says it's not going to charge anyone in the sex video incident. Is that what we're calling it now? The sex video incident? Statement is, for now, we are closing the investigation into the facts and circumstances surrounding sex video that was recorded inside the Hart Senate office building on the morning of Wednesday, December 13th. Let me just pause here for a minute. They're not even using words like alleged. I mean, they're conceding that the sex video was in fact recorded in the Hart Senate office building on December 13th. After consulting with federal and local prosecutors, as well as doing a comprehensive investigation and review of possible charges, it was determined that, despite a likely violation of congressional policy, there's currently no evidence that a crime was committed. I'm sorry. Now, what? We're not going to show you the video right now because I'm sure you've seen it, and frankly, we don't need to see it. But you know what this guy did in this committee room, in this hearing room. And he did it on video and put it out on the internet. And it's been determined that maybe this was a violation of policy, but not a violation of the law. That's where we are right now in America. Let's remind you who this guy is. There's a picture of him in the middle of the thing that we're talking about on the left. And there he is, posing with the President of the United States. Oh, did I mention he's a Democrat? Oh, he's definitely a Democrat. And by the way, if it matters to you, the person who joined him there in the hearing room taking this video was another gentleman. And what they did there, of course, was, well, again, we're not going to get into the details. But that wasn't criminal behavior. No charges. Forget about dropping the charges. Forget about releasing him after he was arrested. He was never arrested. No charges were ever filed. As our friend Mark Hemingway points out, and he's absolutely right, let me get this straight. Walking through the Capitol unauthorized is a felony, but having public sex in the building, filming it, putting it online, doesn't merit at least a public lewdness charge. Please tell why I'm supposed to respect rule of law in this country, and that is the sad truth of it. At this point, there is no reason to respect the rule of law if we continue to see a double standard. Now, we're not going to show you that picture again, but you know what this guy did right there on the desk in the hearing room in a Senate office building. Now compare that to what this guy did on a desk in an office in the House of Representatives. I mean, he's on the desk there, at least his foot is. He's fully dressed. But it doesn't seem quite as objectionable, does it? This man's name is Richard Barnett. He was not only arrested, he was not only charged, he was convicted on not just one count, 8 counts. Civil disorder, obstruction of an official proceeding, theft of government property. I guess if he had gone into Nancy Pelosi's office, taken off all his clothes and done something incredibly tawdry with that shaman guy with the bison headdress and the body paint, that would have been okay. I mean, it wouldn't have been okay for me. And I certainly don't want to see that picture or video. But this is why people are angry. And this is why people are confused. And this is why Attorney General Merrick Garland, people continue to say and point out the reality that there are 2 rules in this country, despite what the Attorney General has said under oath. There are 2 sets of rules. There are 2 sets of standards. There are 2 sets of law, at least how the law is applied in Washington, D.C., and in this country writ large. When the Democrat staffer for a Democrat senator can have sex on the desktop in a hearing room in a Senate office building, and there are no charges filed at all, at the very least, you know, some sort of public health violation, maybe littering, no charges filed. But there were over 1,000 people charged after January 6th, including people who literally walked through a door that was held open by Capitol Police. That incident actually triggered the largest, most expensive investigation in Justice Department history, with over 1,000 charges filed and more still to come. But this incident, not objectionable, not criminal, move on. Good Lord, you wonder why people have lost hope with our government. But you shouldn't lose hope. This is still our country. It's still our Constitution. We just got to kick the people out who are currently making the rules and get some sanity back into this town. That's it for today's show. Listen, we are so grateful that you've been watching and sharing these videos. Please keep it up. It means the world to us, and it'll keep us continuing this show on a regular basis. Thanks for all the comments, too. We read them. We try to respond to them. Keep them coming, because we love seeing what you think of our show, and I love responding directly when I get the chance. So thank you for that. That's it for this show. We'll be back next time. In the meantime, I'm Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.